Whew. Welcome, Peter Cutler. This is Ocean to Ocean with Art Pinsof for Nothing Media. And Peter is a spiritual teacher with a background in Buddhism, Advaita, and we'll find out what else. And he's a new friend. Him and I are both recovering from physical injuries and kind of stuck in bed. And that's how we met in a way. So with that as the introduction, would you like to maybe tell a bit about your own story or introduce yourself to the audience, Peter?
Thank you, Art. Welcome to this space that we're all in. What to say? Well, it's hard to talk about that kind of thing because I haven't for a while identified with the whole idea of a person, really, not a person, but some sort of energy, some sort of space and some sort of energy, which doesn't really have an I in it, you know? It doesn't really have a sense of an I in it. But there's
Peter, I see where you're going with this, and I guess I just want to express to you and the viewers / listeners the way that this podcast has been going is I tend to start by asking questions about your story or whoever. And because of the types of people I'm interviewing, or non-people as the case might be, it's like a train. I visualize it as like a train going into the ocean that's made of salt, and once it hits the ocean, there's no story. And like what the way you introduced yourself already, it's like we're already in the ocean. It's already dissolved. We're in this space already.
Back up a little. Back the train up a little bit.
well, no. Honestly, this could go any way you want, or any way that, let's say.
Yeah, I'm fine doing for a little bit.
Yeah. People would love to hear your story, I'm sure.
Well, here's one thing that I can explain that has to do with what we talked about a little bit about evolution, about seeing this as evolution rather than awakening and enlightenment being the old paradigm of the way of seeing it, which sounds very special, but evolution is just something that happens and everybody is in this process. And that's how I feel it is. So about 20 years ago, because of a number of experiences that I've been having and 40 years of spiritual practice, I guess, that sort of prepared it, I felt like I was surfing on a tidal wave. I felt like there was this tidal wave of momentum. Like, you know, a tidal wave is a very powerful thing, a tsunami, right? If you've ever surfed, you know, in big waves, and you know, some of those waves are really powerful, particularly if you wipe out. But a tsunami is way more powerful than even those waves are. So that's what it felt like. It was like this force that was just inevitable. And I was riding on it, and I had been resisting it, as we all do, for a while. And I was no longer resisting it. So I was just sort of swept along with it. And now I'm feeling, and I think I knew back then too, that this wave was evolution. It was the wave of evolution. And so a lot of the things that happened they just happened, you know? I mean, it wasn't anything that I was doing, but things happened so quickly and so often, healing people, all that stuff. It just happened. It wasn't anything that I was doing. It was when I got out of the way, all my thoughts, and just was in this space of emptiness, this empty mind. It allowed evolution to just work. It allowed evolution to just keep doing and giving me these experiences and all these things that I needed to be part of this evolution. And I feel it's a wonderful way to look at it as evolution, because it's so not special. not specific to any person. Evolution, the whole species evolves, you know, and all species evolve. Everything is constantly in this evolution. And what we seem to be going through now, wonderfully, is a speeding up of the evolution, right? We could say Buddha, Jesus, Ramana. These were just evolved beings. These were the people, the forefront of this evolution. Like, that's how evolution works. The whole species doesn't just suddenly, boom, they just evolve. It's like one of us.
Peter, I want to interrupt you here just because I want to maybe acknowledge that a lot of our viewers and listeners are maybe coming from a perspective of nowhere to get. You know, like a lot of the people who subscribe to this channel are perhaps, I'm not sure how familiar you are with Tony Parsons or Jim Newman or anyone like that, but it's very much a perspective of there is no evolution, and the story is just a dream, or not even that, and the whole evolving, if it is evolving to get somewhere, that's sort of a cause of suffering for so many. I mean, I mentioned to you on the phone earlier about this sort of now dethroned guru of Andrew Cohen, who I guess he's on his own path, and he's tried to make amends, and he's been apologizing, but he seemed to have taken this. Well, he started with Papa G, who said there's nowhere to get. It's all just this, and stop your search is the famous Papa G advice, or in a sense. Yeah. And then Andrew parted ways with Papa G, very influenced by Ken Wilber, and he embraced this evolution idea out as there is always somewhere to get. There's more, deeper, which I resonate with that too. But I guess
let's see how we bring these two things together.
Yes, please. Yes.
It's good that I'm talking in this way, but the way, in my experience, like I talked about the wave, it's just letting go to this, just completely letting go to what is. That's how the evolution happens, really. Because if we feel that we want to get somewhere, it's an idea. We're still trapped in our mind, and the mind is this old paradigm that we have, because it comes from the old paradigm of materiality, it's, you know, from experiences that we have, we can see that that's sort of a primitive way of being, and it's fine. We were like that too, and most of humanity is still like that. It's just that many more people are evolving. They're waking up to this something that's more here. And how we do that is we have to let go of all of that. We have to let go of the mind. We have to let go of all our practices, our traditions, and everything that we know, and just be completely open to what this is. That's allowing the evolution to happen. We don't evolve. We don't do anything to evolve. It's not like I'm going to practice really hard to evolve, or I'm going to try, or I'm not evolved enough and I need to be in this place. We let go of all of that. And the evolution just happens by itself, because it's a natural thing. It happens by itself. Our job is only to get out of the way and let it happen. At least that's my experience. The more I'm out of the way, it happens. And today I was talking with my friend, and he's very, very, very attuned to energy. His whole life has been very attuned to energy, remarkably so, more than anybody that I've ever met, actually. And he really understands, in a way, how it works. A lot of it I don't understand, but it's still happening because I get out of the way and it happens. And he talked about the Buddha field. And the Buddha field really is this evolution. You know, we don't do anything with the Buddha field. The Buddha field just is. It's just this, it just is this thing. So in a way, it dovetails into that, because is there anywhere to go? No, the Buddha field is always here. We're opening up into our true nature, into what we really are. And what we really are is this evolution. It's all the baggage that we have in the way is a resistance to evolving. So most people are resisting this evolution. They're not intentionally, but with all their energy, they are resisting evolving. They're, you know, trying to say, I know this, I know that, this is how it's going to go, or I need to, all of that is a resistance to simply.
Well, Peter, allow me to interject, because I feel like this may be a question some may have on their mind at this point in the conversation. Who is the one resisting, and who is the one changing things, and where is there to get?
Well, we're not getting anywhere, because evolution is just life, right? It's just something that happens, all the species that we see. And more than that, because if we look at quantum physics, which I'm really have been interested in this for a while, and particularly recently, I've been very interested in seeing how the most cutting edge of quantum physics, which is the unified field theory, which is quite a spiritual thing. It really goes back to the ancient wisdom traditions, this a unified field theory. Basically, it's everything is reduced to this one, this pure energy or pure consciousness that underlies everything. And seeing, as I see things, as energy, right? I see form, I see you and this computer screen and all this stuff, I see this, but I see energy even more than that. I see the whole thing as energy, and the potentiality for it being this matter, which is the quantum physics thing. It's just, I can see and feel this is energy, and doing that, for whatever reason, fills me with the feeling of great peace, bliss, love. So I have this great experience of peace, bliss, and love from seeing things in that way. I don't know why, you know, that's just that. And so that has become my normal way of seeing things, because I like feeling like that. And I know it's healthy for me. This body is a physical thing and it needs to heal, but it's also just pure energy. And because it's pure energy, feeling that level of wellness, goodness, you know, whatever, it's a good feeling, right? These are the good feelings. So that energy, that vibrational energy of a good feeling like that, has a lot to do with healing it. And it is. So the more I open to it, and the more of that I experience, I feel the healing happen, you know, on a physical level and an energetic level, you know, but it's happening through energy. So this is, so many people know about energy healing, and so many people have done that now. This is one of the things that I feel is the way things are evolving to, is, as quantum physics is seeing, is realizing that matter is not matter. Everything that we see as solid form and stuff isn't really that. It really is energy. It's a collapsing of this energy waveform into something that we can see as form of these.
Well, Peter, let me try to digest and respond to some of the things you said there. Yeah, so Tony Parsons actually uses this word energy. He likes that word because I think it's impersonal in a sense. I've heard it described that way, at least.
In person?
Impersonal, not personal.
Impersonal.
So
okay.
The idea of energy just being, and there's no identification of anyone with it, and this is all just energy, boundless. You know, I've also heard, let's say, Jim Newman describe it as anarchy in a sense. But the thing that's coming to mind in response to what you're saying is actually something that I was reading a bit of UG Krishnamurti like last night, I think. Somebody sent me something, and he was making this distinction about diet. Or no, actually, this was Jim Newman. Jim Newman was talking about diet. It was in this interview he did with this guy named Atlas, who has a YouTube channel called Simulation. It's a pretty good channel. And I think he'd love to interview you as well, Peter, to be honest. But I think this idea of, I guess this guy Atlas was asking him, well, and this is something I often ask people when they go down the radical non-dual route of languaging, which you're not, but when they say, oh, there's no one doing anything and all this, I'll ask, well, but you have to at least concede you'd rather have like a sandwich than dirt to eat, right? So in this sense, but the thing Jim Newman said in response to that question, he said, well, this just happens naturally. It's like the body just, and this is basically what Ramana said. Ramana said the body will just do what is natural, and the body will naturally seek things that feel good. That's what Jim Newman said. He, like, the body will seek what feels good, whether that's McDonald's or brown rice and steamed vegetables. It, in some sense, you know, the body is a pleasure seeking machine, and the brain is designed to apparently to help do that, whether it's short term or long term seeking. This is where I guess morality stems from. And in traditional Advaita, they have these words like the yamas and niyamas, the things that are good to do and not good to do. And this basically amounts to don't try to not cause harm to your body or others.
Sure.
And this, so I'm sort of
chocolate cake, and that was your whole diet, and you ate nothing but chocolate cake. It probably wouldn't be very good for your body over time. It's just
right.
Chocolate cake are not the nutrients that the body really needs. They need something else in addition to
right.
that.
So at a certain point, the body may be diagnosed with diabetes, and then that's no longer an option. Yeah. And we have these very radically iconoclastic examples, such as Nisargadatta Maharaj, who chain smoked unfiltered tobacco his entire life, eventually died of lung cancer, but in his late 80s, he lived a full, rich life. Before that came. So it's, and when he was asked about it, he said, why do you smoke these BDs, these unfiltered cigarettes all the time? He said, why? It's what the body wants. Who am I to interject with what the body demands? And, you know, and so there, I'm just throwing some ideas out there. So feel free to.
The body does, if it's conditioned to, you know, there's types of food that are excitotoxins, right, that are built into things like McDonald's and stuff like that, salts and things like that, that the body will crave at a certain time. So it creates a sort of a food addiction. So it isn't really good for the body, but the body certainly wants it, and the mind wants it. It's trained to want that. It may want chocolate cake, you know, and it may not want something that's more healthy for it, but there's a balance in that. And nothing is like, whenever we make a statement of this is true and this is not true, we run into trouble. And that's the beauty of the Zen practice that I had. It's to take both of those extremes and sort of dissolve them, you know, let them go. So there isn't that. And then you end up with basically, I don't know. But in that not knowing, you can open up into something that is good, that is true. How does that happen? I don't know. That's the Buddha field. That's the energy. That's the inner wisdom that we have, but we don't know we have. That everybody has this inner wisdom. That's the saying of there's no place to go, because the inner wisdom is always here. But at the same time, there is a place to go because we're not aware of the inner wisdom. Certainly not at the infinite depths that it is. It's more than anybody has ever known, Buddha or anyone else. So there's always more that we can go to that, and how we go as we let go to it. So both things are true, that there's no place to go and there's a place to go. Both of those are true, and neither of them are true. There is no place to go and there's not no place to go. You know, so then you have this openness. Now what? I don't know. But in some ways, we say, I don't know, we sort of do know. Something, not our mind knows, but maybe our heart, or something that we feel. We feel this knowing and we feel good. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, that's good. And that's that space. It's a very healthy space. It just feels healthy. And scientists who have been working on this, who are quantum physicists who also are meditators and also doing this, so they're sort of leading the field into this beautiful convergence of science and wisdom traditions. They've opened up into the subjective, whereas a lot of the scientists still won't open up to the subjective, because You can only experience this as subjective. It cannot be measured, you know, but you can experience it. How do we experience it? That's a complete mystery. How does this body mind, which seems so limited in so many ways, be able to open up to something that's infinite? I don't know. I have no idea. It's amazing. I'm just happy about it. I'm just grateful for it, right? And that feeling of gratitude, that feeling of awe is allowing all this stuff to happen, allowing us to touch this place. So it's right to say there's no place to go, because if we try to go to this place, well, that's impossible. It's like trying to go to sleep. You can't. And yet you just fall asleep anyway without doing anything. And that's how you just get out of the way, and this something of this is here. And that's what Ramana calls the self. You know, there's many names for what this is, but nobody whose experience is grasping onto those names, because it's a letting go that we experience this. And that's how this evolution happens. It happens by letting go. Because if we're trying anything, we're just going to try with the old paradigm of our conditioned thoughts. We're going to try to make that what it is. You know, if we're looking for bliss, we're going to try with our experience of what we think bliss is, but it isn't, and try and get there. And that will prevent us from getting what is. So we have to let it all go. And then in that experience, like your background, you know, it's yes, that. What is that? I don't know what that is. It just is that. So my training in Zen of all those years with Thich Nhat Hanh has been really, I think, useful in not getting trapped into these things, which even in non-duality, to say there's nowhere to go, there's nothing to do, there's nobody to do it, that becomes another dogmatism. And I know you don't like the dogmatism. So now we're stuck in this thing. Where do we go from there? There's nowhere. You're stuck. You can't go anywhere. You can't go where you need to go, because you're holding on to this. It's like if you're stuck in emptiness or you're stuck in bliss. Always in Zen, there's a warning of being stuck in emptiness, but that's when you're attached to that. Real emptiness, you can't be attached to. There's nothing to attach to. You don't know what it is. You just, oh, what are you yang about? I don't know. Just this. What is this? I don't know. It just seems to keep unfolding. I don't know what it is. Right? That feels good. I don't know. Yeah. And that's
Peter. So that resonates deeply, what you just said. And I guess I'm going to ask a question in an attempt to tie together these two apparently separate things of evolution and the perception that it's just this. And so it's interesting, because I guess my experience is there's always this, what's only ever just this, whatever that is, you know, and then the other side of it is that what this is, my body's perceptions can say, oh, well, smells this smell, it's this level of brightness according to my eyes, this loud, or it reminds my memory of, you know, this and that acid trip or samadhi or whatever, and or being in love or heartbroken. And yet it's always new. It's always this unknowable. Okay, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth at all. My question.
It's always new. Yes.
Always new. It's always now. But I guess my question is, how would you express the tying together, if it's possible, of the evolution and the always just this?
Well, underlying the fundamental nature of reality, this going back into wisdom cosmology from the most ancient yogis, is this this sense of this oneness, this source of all that exists. Long before we had anything to measure, super colliders or anything else, 10,000 years ago, yogis were directly experiencing what they're just beginning to approach now, and still can't measure, but they talk about it as a unified field, and before that the quantum field or the Higgs field. So they're pointing to this direct subjective experience that yogis have had, and a number of people have had throughout the years, which I call evolution now. These people have evolved to directly experiencing this. And did it affect their lives in profound ways? Well, yeah, hell yeah, it did. And anybody that's in contact with them is very aware of that, as they are. So that's sort of a going somewhere. Did they try to go somewhere? Yeah, I think many of us have practices. Some of us don't, and we still open up to this. But the opening up to it, we can't say was the cause of the practices. What we can say is all the practices we did sort of were like plowing a field and maybe throwing some stuff in there. But a lot of things have to happen before anything grows. Plowing, and that isn't enough. It has to be watered. There has to be sunshine. All kinds of things need to happen to have something grow. So the practice is sort of, plowing the field, I guess, or doing something to prepare to make it maybe easier for this to happen, but no guarantee, because we know people that have been meditating very, very seriously for 40, 50, 60 years and still have never experienced this really, maybe a touch of it. And some never at all with all that. So we don't know how we open. It's mysterious how we open to it. And thank God, those of us who have, it's like, I always feel like, like, why did I win the lottery? I didn't even enter. I feel it just happens. We don't really know, which makes terrible teaching. I mean, it's the worst kind of teaching because people want to say, give me the ABCs. What do you do? Yeah. And I can't honestly say. If I really look back, yes, these different things happen. Yes, these different awakenings happen throughout my life. And some of them were very profound, some of them less profound. All those things happen, but I still don't know what this is, how this is. And I don't want to know really, because to be open to it, that's why I experience it, because I don't know, because I let it be what it is, And so that is evolution too, because what is evolution? I mean, when people are in a process of evolution, and we are, everyone listening to this, you and all of us are in this process of evolution. Not only are we in the process of evolution, but we're in the cutting edge of this evolution, whether we do anything about it or not. Just by being interested in this, it's already part of that. There are a lot of people who would have no interest in this at all, and they're not on the cutting edge of it. They're a little bit.
Well, Peter, let me interject there. What you're saying reminds me of this old Vedanta saying that Nisargadatta used to say, that if you're showing up here at all, if you're listening to this or watching this video, your head is already in the tiger's mouth, and so implying it's only a matter of. I love that, because
chop your head off, but you're going to feel much better when it does.
yeah. There's no one left to worry about this when the head is chopped off. Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, I know. I guess for me, the word evolution doesn't occur to me, but I'm open to it. But I guess my question with the word evolution and that framing or that model is, who is the one that's evolving, and what's the A to B to C evolution? What is that? What exactly is that?
Well, I can say I have a feeling, and from quantum physics and from my own experience of just living as more as energy than physical matter, and seeing what that does in terms of healing and how it affects other people as well as myself. It's moving into this state beyond the restrictions of matter. It's moving into the pure energy state, and then into pure consciousness. That not as an individual, that individuals are doing it because we make up humanity, but humanity is doing this. Like all of human consciousness is evolving in this way. So it's not a single thing. It's the whole totality of humanity, and more than humanity. Every creature is evolving, but humanity happens to be evolving in this conscious way, which we can see in ways happening. It was very rare throughout the last, numbers of thousands of years. There weren't that many people, and there wasn't also a way of communicating things. Now, people that are caught up in this wave of evolution. Rick Archer's interviewed like over 500 people, and all of them, to whatever extent they are caught up in this wave of evolution. That's pretty amazing. And he's got probably another 500 or 1,000 more that he's waiting to,
Hey, Peter, I've got 2,000 waiting, and you know what? I'm that's just a joke, but I'm waiting. I'm a bit envious of Rick Archer. I looked at his website the other day, and he has the perfect description of his podcast on the top of the website, which says interviews with awakening individuals.
Yeah.
And I just love it's expressing so succinctly what you're saying right now, that there are various apparent levels of awakening. Yeah. And perhaps someone like, I've heard many people say, and maybe this is something you might like to speak to. I've heard many people say who, some of which may be watching, that Tony Parsons speaks more on point or more clearly than others, because many want to hear what they perceive as the most clear expression of this, without the fluff of, let's say, enlightenment or soul reincarnation, eventually getting to a place, because this is already no thing apparently happening, as Tony might say. What would you say in response to that?
Well, I would go back to the word in evolution. I like the word evolution because it sounds to me less special and individual than awakening or enlightenment does. I think enlightenment worked in an old paradigm where we took, like at the Buddha's time, who knows, maybe there were like, 3 or 4 other people who were just as awake as him or close to that. There were a lot of teachers around at his time.
Yeah.
But not that many, and not that many humans were alive that time, and civilization had already, functioned more than it did 10,000 years earlier, where the ancient yogis might, there were just tribes. Maybe they'd come across 1 or 2 people who would see anything of them. So that, to me, was the beginning stages of evolution, and it was natural that we would look up to the Buddha and would say, "Oh yes, whoa." And we would think very, very special. And to me, that feels like an old paradigm, that now we're in a place where we're moving to where we don't have to think that's special anymore, because the whole species is evolving. The whole species is becoming Buddha.
Right.
And it's not immediate. I mean, we have a long ways to go. Most of the population still isn't in that, but many more people than ever before have been, and we have communication ways to help that happen, and people practicing. So many people around the world know about these things now than ever did before, and are interested, because if you're not in that wave to a certain degree, you don't have any interest in it. It's like, I don't care. Ooh, that's nothing. It's invisible to you, right? But to many people, it's not invisible. Even the book, The Power of Now, was a bestseller, sold over 1 million copies. So at least some of those people had some interest in what that was. So that's a sign to me of evolution. And I like the word evolution because it doesn't feel special. It doesn't feel separate. It doesn't feel like one special guru, which was our old tradition. Like, there's the guru, go to the student, which is all good. If the guru really is awake, there's a Buddha field around them, and it will affect people, part of evolution. It's all a good thing. But to think that he's special, that is a way of resisting evolution, because then you're not, and then you don't sort of flow with this. You think only him and not me. That's a way of resisting your own nature, your own awakening, if we want to call it that. Or your own evolution. It's a way of resisting that. So a new way is to say, we're all evolving. Everybody's evolving. Even the people that aren't, it's invisible to them at this point and they have no interest in it. Something in them is already beginning to. And maybe in 10 years, it'll happen, or who knows. So it feels less special to me, more scientific, maybe,
Peter, I see what you're getting at here. Now I'm starting to get what you're really what you mean by evolution, you're in the sense you're expressing this word evolution. Both a couple times I asked you, what did you mean by that? You both times you expressed that it's less personal, that it's more just animals are evolving. You know, even if you look at the Big Bang, you know, originally there was just hydrogen and nitrogen, but somehow they collided in a certain way that created more complex chemistry. So all of this
are single-celled organisms, the first life form on this planet. Everything, right. Single species is this. And now look at the variety of things. It's unbelievable, right. When it comes from this one thing, all of it.
Right. So right. So what I feel like you're pointing to is this scientific model or lens of viewing reality through. It has a built-in impersonal component, much like the word energy and the way Tony might use that.
Yeah.
But this is saying the evolution itself is a mystery as to why it's happening, but it appears to be happening. And in a sense, you know, what we used to be, our ancestors were primates that were unrecognizable from us. And now we're this. Perhaps in 1,000 years, we'll be robots or who knows what. It's all just this emergent, to me, the older, you know, Buddhist or Vedic, you know, poetry around this might be the 1,000-petal lotus blooming, just ever unfolding, blossoming, you know, and one petal after another until who knows when, towards who knows what, in this apparent dream.
That seems to be what happens if we look at life on the planet, which we're pretty, you know, we can see it's amazing varieties and keeps on expanding in every species. You could look at spiders. I mean, there must be almost 1 million different species of spiders. There's a lot of spiders in Sedona, so I get to see the different ways they make webs and stuff. And all of them are different in some way, and all of them are really good. They've all improved in some way to what they were before. Everything is evolving to something that's better, whether it's better at catching flies or better at whatever needs to happen. It all seems to be going in an evolutionary train that makes things increasingly better somehow, more complex, but also better. And so it's wonderful that we're in this thing. And the idea of having it be less special, I think a lot of teachers are doing that, and Tony Parsons too, and saying there's nowhere to go is in a way saying, if we think it's special, it's going to be harder for us. We're going to have a problem. And this is how things have been before. There's the special teacher and the special this, and still people are doing this with gurus. They're worshiping gurus and they're like wonderful. And it has its place, but it also has a lot of, distractions from your own evolving and prevents your own evolving. So it's a mixed blessing. And if we're attached to one edge of it, it's a double-edged sword. When we're attached to one edge of it, it's going to cut us, you know, and we have to be able to see both sides of it and really let it go, and then open to what's evolving. So it's very, I think it helps people open up to what's happening with them, you know, because if they understand, yes, you're evolving too. Everybody's evolving. Where are you in this? Where are you? What's your direct experience of what's happening? You know, and just to feel that, to let go. And you don't know, because it's a mystery. You're evolving to something that you don't know. You're not evolving to something you know. That's the old way. That's the old you. That's the caterpillar. You know, everything you know, even all your spiritual knowledge, that's the caterpillar. What's the butterfly? I don't know.
Don't know.
Let's find.
You don't know. Yeah. There's this
by being it. Let's find out by experiencing it. That's how we know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then once you know, it's not that anymore either. It's like, because that's evolution implies, it reminds me of this framing of there are no nouns, only verbs. There is no art, there's only arting or humaning, or this sort of language is pointing towards there's no static anything. So the moment the caterpillar turns into a butterfly, well, a millisecond later, the molecules and quantum particles within the butterfly have changed. And so it's not the same butterfly.
No, No, everything. I mean, this kind of knowing, this inner knowing that's part of this Buddha field or whatever we want to call it, this openness, this pure energy or consciousness, is it's not the same knowing of the mind. It's a totally different, it doesn't have the same meaning or vocabulary. It's a feeling, and it's not a restricted solid saying like, I know this, eureka, I've got it. It's not that kind of knowing. It's a much deeper, it's a felt as a more of a knowing, but it isn't this restricted knowing. It's like, I know this, whatever this is, this constant changing thing. And I feel very comfortable in this, where that's something that my mind can't know, that it can't fix onto. There's nothing to fix onto it. There isn't anything to fix onto it, but I know that experience. I know what that feels like. And that's the knowing. It's the knowing of, I guess, what you could say, what the mind can't know, but this somehow does in that different way, that different open way, right? It's, right? You see, it's that feeling, that inner feeling. It's all throughout the past 10,000 years that we know of. And humans, they have discovered this by going in, not out. So it's this very inner subjective experience, but deeper and deeper inner. Thoughts? No, that's way outside. I got to go a lot deeper than that. Feelings? No, that's still outside. You know, everything, sensations, that's outside. I'm going deeper than that. We just, the backward step, as Adyashanti calls it, but we keep stepping back, and we keep stepping back, and we keep stepping back, like your picture, mind you. It looks like it's like just this eternally backward step, and every time it reveals more, you know, and it always feels new, and at the same exact time it feels like it's never changing. It's that thing, it's always totally new, and somehow this knowing says that it's never changed, and yet it's always new at the same time. It's, to the mind, almost everything that comes from this is a paradox. How can those two opposite things be the same? They just are. I don't know why, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's this really wonderful freedom of this space of not knowing that allows us to keep going back deeper, because the human mind and nature is to be curious and to really always want to know. So once we let go of that mental knowing, that tendency of wanting to know is still there. So our radar is just right out to keep going back further and further and further and let it show us, you know, but it's not showing us of the mind anymore. It's showing us something else, you know, that's part of this evolution. It's showing us that, something to do with energy. We can't even say that.
Yes, yes. So what I find interesting about these conversations, not just between me and other people or whatever, is I notice no matter who's talking to who, there's never an agreement on the language, never. And to me, it's almost like, even if it's the subtlest difference, there just is. And it's like this background you keep referring to of these colors. I see it all as these dancing colors. There's no two humans that have the same genetics, the same, you know, upbringing, environment, conditioning. And so everyone's going to have a different felt sense of expression of what's happening or what they feel compelled to express even. And it's, to me, this is like the beauty of colors on paint, you know, just merging and being distinct from one another and contrasting one another, and all the different, you know, you feel this in stories and music and film. It's what makes art so beautiful in all these media is it's the contrast. It's the dance between apparent opposites that sort of need each other to be felt. You don't feel the power of, like, you know, like a Jimi Hendrix solo or a Nirvana chorus without the quiet, you know, subtle parts that come before it. And this is the way all of life seems to be. It's without the seeking, there's no beauty to the no seeking, and vice versa. These things seem appear to need each other almost.
Yeah, yeah, we have to seek to the no seeking. It's all there. And that's why Tony Parsons goes in that direction, or Jim Newman, who I only knew from you, seemed dogmatic in that holding on to it. And it was all useful, but it's like Thich Nhat Hanh used to say, I mean, this is a teaching of the Buddha, that
Yes.
that you use a thorn to remove another thorn, but you don't keep the thorn. Then you're done with that thorn. It's like all teachings are a medicine. If you're suffering and you're relieved of suffering from that medicine, good, it's done its work. You don't keep taking the medicine, it'll kill you. You know, it's then it becomes a poison. You do it for what it's good. So at step, oh, that got rid of that ignorance. Okay, good. But you don't have to hold on to this. Now that becomes ignorance, because you're not keeping, you know, letting that go. So don't be attached to anything. Don't be attached to one side or another. Be open to what this is. So for me, the words that are all different is you know, there were certain words that you said earlier. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was something, and it just touched my heart. And that's where I felt this knowing. I go, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And that's what I like. I just like getting these little, they're like nuggets of things that touch my heart, and I go, oh yeah, that's good, yeah, that's good. And from this feeling, this energetic feeling, that's how I recognize what's valuable to me, what's true, you know, for this moment, right? True in this moment, because it's just momentary. So you get that, yeah, good, that's nice, you know. But I'm not going to grab hold of it and say, you know, nothing exists. That's it. I'm holding on to this nothing exists. No, nothing exists and everything exists. You know, that's the paradox. Nothing exists and everything exists. And neither nothing exists nor everything exists. Don't get confused by thoughts. Don't get confused by your words. There's a Zen koan or story that is a Zen master. I don't remember his name. Would wake up every morning and it'd say, master, and then it'd say, yes, and it'd say like, wake up. And then it'd answer, yes, sir, and say, don't be fooled by any thoughts, basically. Don't be fooled by anyone's thoughts or your thoughts. And he'd say, yes, sir. So every morning, that's what he said. And I thought, that's a good way to start the day. That's a very practical way to say, but you know, to the logical mind, it sounds, what's he doing talking to himself? Who's the master and who's the person that's responding? It doesn't matter. You know, it's your mind gets confused. Your mind of thoughts gets confused, and the master is something more than that, is your, I guess, higher self or whatever. And it's saying like, yeah, don't be confused by all this stuff. This is not something you need to concern yourself with. There's something else that's underlying all this that is true, and you're never apart from it. You know it. So when Tony Parsons or, you know, Jim Newman talk about that, yes, that's right. Where's there to go? But you go, there's a place to go. You go into that. You go in deeper and deeper to that. How do you do that? I don't know. It just happens, you know?
Well, Peter, would you like to maybe, you know, describe a bit about maybe the last big change that happened for you, or some significant shift of perspective, and what the story appeared around that was?
I think I can. I mean, it's really, this unfolding is happening continuously. So having this injury and this thing that happened, that's all been amazingly wonderful. It's allowed me to just sort of be here, and having a lot of people focusing attention on me, doing remote energy healers that cared about me. And they said, oh, I want to do this, so I'm sending you this all the time. And then having my friend who's really wonderful with energy come over and do it. And then plus I'm doing it at the same time. I find that I've experienced that energy is just even much more powerful than it was before. So it's all human consciousness. We're all affected by human consciousness, right? We're all sort of floating in this sea of human consciousness. And human consciousness in that level has been focusing this really nice energy, this healing energy on me, on this body. And then I'm also adding to it. And when I add to it, it's more than I was doing before. And I realize, oh, all these other people are helping. It's combining all this, because in a quantum realm, in the way we understand the quantum realm, it's very much like this. There is no space or time in it. It's beyond all that.
Well, Peter, you mentioned this other, Peter, that's a beautiful expression with what you're going through now with your injury. You also mentioned to me once about this, I forget how you put it, but it was like a nothingness that was scary, but liberating. And I was wondering if that's something you'd want to share.
Oh, I could do that. Well, that was, for a long time, I think starting 20 years ago with the healings from other people, I learned about healing myself from that. And one of the things I learned is to be open to everything that happens. So if I had a negative feeling, a feeling of sadness, despair, anger, whatever it is, just to be fully open to it. And so fully open to it that I'm not attached to the words of what it is, just the pure feeling of it. And as I do that, it heals. And often after doing it for 20 years, it heals very, very quickly. It just sort of releases whatever repressed thoughts are attached to it. They just come up and go. And within a matter of seconds, it's gone. And there's just this great feeling of peace and bliss again. So I actually look forward to having these uncomfortable experiences to be able to do that, because they sort of, after a while, happen less and less. So, one day, David Hoffmeister does this Course in Miracles teaching, and he was doing it with movies. And I was a film director, so I was very interested in movies and still am. And he uses movies to sort of open up these repressed feelings. It's actually quite ingenious. So he had one movie that I was watching, and he said to do this with it. It was on a video, and I watched the movie. It was a very good movie. But at one point, I experienced this terror, this just really unbelievable terror. I'd never really experienced. I'd had a lot of fear in my life, but never, this was like much more than that. It was just this absolute terror. And so I stopped the film and I just dealt with that terror. Where's that coming from? It's the movie only triggers it. So where's it coming from? I'm feeling it. So, and opened up to it fully. And I expected, well, it should be gone in a matter of seconds or a minute or so. No, it just stayed as this terror. And then I, went on for hours. And after an hour or so, I was feeling like, whoa. And part of the terror thoughts would come in and say, well, you've had bliss for the last 20 years. Now the rest of your life is going to be pure terror. And I accepted that. And I said, okay, I guess if that's what it's going to be, I accept that. So I just stayed open to it, but it still stayed as terror. And finally, after a couple of hours, I said, well, I guess I need to go on with my life. So I decided I would walk up to the top of this hill next to my house. And I did. And then I sat down, and then the terror faded. And what I felt was what Ramana Maharshi talks about as the I, the center of the self, as being this little thing the size of a golf ball or something, and to the right of your chest. And I'd known that, read that for years ago, but I'd never really felt it. And I felt it. I felt that thing. When the terror went, there was just this. And it was this beautiful, innocent thing. It was just the I. And it was purely innocent. It didn't have any negative qualities to it, but it was like Velcro. And so all things could be attached to it, including the sense of a self or a person, and all those things would be attached to it, and all kinds of baggage and things like that. That was its thing. And as I was thinking, like, yeah, but as it's naked, innocent thing. I could keep this forever. And as I thought that, it just vanished. And then I looked out at the mountains that were, you know, across from me, and there was no space. You know, it was like, it just was all one. Everything was one. It felt like a holy moment, a very sacred moment. And at the time it was in spring, and there were these cherry blossoms and these or almond blossoms, like cherry blossoms, beautiful pink little flowers, and they fall like snow. And so they were falling and drifting down, and one of them landed on my hand, in the palm of my hand. And I thought, oh, this I should take like a sacrament, you know, like a Christian thing where you have the wafer. So I said, oh, I should do this to sort of be part of this whole thing that happened. I will eat this. So I put it on my tongue, and that was it. It just, you know, sort of dissolved. But I realized that fear, that terror, because it took so long for it to dissolve, that it wasn't a thought. It was something that was beyond a thought. It was before thought. It was the fear of not existing. And so what I expected to happen when that self went, was that there would be no existence, that all mountains and everything, me and all existence would be gone. There would just be no existence. And that didn't happen. And so I was happy, you know, I was like, oh, look, mountains and all this, you know, this is here. But my experience of it was very different after that sense of the self dissolved. It was just, it was beautiful, you know, but what can I say? There was no separation, basically, you know, everything was sacred. Everything was sacred. So that little thing that fell down, that was as sacred as the most sacred thing there could be. But everything was. If there was dog shit in front of me, which there didn't happen to be, that would be sacred too, just as sacred. Everything was purely sacred. So that was probably the last kind of big experience that I had. You know, there were many, many along the way, but that was, and it's sort of a trajectory too. You know, it's sort of like there was a linear path. If I went back and said, and this, and then that, then later led to this, just more and more freedom, more and more freedom. So is there some place to go? Yeah, but where am I going? That's the thing. Where am I going?
Yeah.
Where I am. I'm going where I am. You know, I'm just going into where I am. You know, I'm letting go of the obstacles that were in the way of where I am. And of course, there's a lot. All our conditioned thoughts are obstacles to where I am. And any new one we pick up, if we attach to them, then they're just going to be another obstacle. Even a brilliant insight like, oh, it was the terror of this, and this happened, and this. I don't hold on to that thing, you know, but I can remember it. And it was a wonderful experience. And I think the best of it that I've used when I've told other people about it is to say that these things that we don't want, like, who would like terror? Would you like some terror? Nobody wants terror, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants terror. I don't want terror either, but I've learned to say, okay, yes, I accept that too. Because somehow I feel that behind all of it, there is this incredibly benign, beautiful intelligence. And I trust that so much more than anything else, that if it's going to bring me that, then I know that's what I need. I know there's something good about that. What about terror for the rest of your life? I guess I don't think, my mind doesn't say that's good. But if this happens, then the intelligent behind it is that's what I need. So we've all had experiences in our life, some of them traumatic or difficult or challenging. And those were things that we really needed. Those were exactly what we needed. You know, I mean, would I have experienced that sense of the self, you know, to the right of my chest, like Ramana describes, and would that disappear? And would I experience this holy moment without that terror? I don't think so. I don't think so. That was part of the whole thing. Did it feel good? It felt like terror.
It's
good at all.
Peter, it's we were put in touch, I believe, by our mutual friend Chuck Hillig.
Yeah.
And the reason why I think he told you to reach out to me was because we both have injuries that have us stuck in bed. So it's, I mean, and that's sort of a one example out of an infinitude, but we wouldn't necessarily even have met if we weren't both physically temporarily disabled.
Yeah.
Physically.
Isn't it weird how life works?
It's amazing. And it reminds me of that Ram Dass documentary you've mentioned in our previous talks, Fierce Grace. And I think I told you one of my favorite moments in that documentary is when the nurse is saying something to him and he just looks at her and he says, if I hadn't had this stroke, I wouldn't have met you. And he means that with this beautiful love of like, how great is it that I know you, that you're here to help me and I'm here to be grateful. And this magical, beautiful relationship wouldn't have happened if I didn't have a stroke.
Yeah. Yeah, it really opened him up. I mean, for one thing, in Fierce Grace, it was very clear to me seeing that movie that for the first time in his life, he actually awakened. I mean, he'd been helping us, writing the books and all the stuff that in my childhood and everything that went through that were so useful and helpful, and a brilliant storyteller and all that, but he wasn't really awake. He was still attached to his guru and thinking that was that. But after the stroke, that Fierce Grace just showed me, oh man, there's no question about it. His tears were just beautiful. I mean, I was so happy to see that movie and so happy for him because he was getting older at that time too. So with all the help that he'd done for so many people, for my whole generation, he deserved to wake up. And I was really happy that he did. You know, I felt so grateful and happy that he did. I said, yes.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you want to see that.
Yeah. I felt that he deserved it after what he'd done for me and my whole generation, basically. And not my whole generation, but everybody that was open to it and interested. He was a huge help to all of us.
Yeah, you know, has anyone ever told you that your voice kind of sounds, I'd say like even now, it sounds like a young Ram Dass?
Really? Oh,
a bit. A bit, yeah. No, Ram Dass was the beginning of my seeking, or one stage of it, I should say, maybe halfway through, and depending how you look at it. But yeah, I listened to dozens, maybe hundreds of hours of him at one point, and yeah, your voice is quite similar, funny enough.
Really? Yeah. Well,
Richard
Alpert, yeah. And I knew about him before because I was a hippie in '67 and he was still doing acid at that time. And so was I. And him and Leary were a big, huge influence to my generation for doing that too. And the whole thing, like the Beatles were, you know, and he was an influence on them.
Let me ask you this. What your early experiences with acid or psychedelics, did that touch upon this indescribable stillness, or was it not quite?
Well, it was interesting. The very first acid trip I had was in Haight-Ashbury. I was 17 and me and my friends left high school and we went out over the spring and we were there for the Summer of Love. What serendipity. Well, of course, I think there was sort of a little advertising around it that we kind of saw as well. But so we left high school and went there and the first acid trip, I told my friends that I'd taken acid before. I was really encouraging them all to do it, but I never had. And so in Haight-Ashbury, there were people who were giving out acid for nothing, for free. You just had to put it on your tongue so you wouldn't take it, store it and try and sell it or whatever. So there was one of the people who got acid from Osley who was staying at this crash pad that we were at. And so we had my first trip and all of our first trip. And as we were walking outside, everything seemed to be shimmering with this energy. And I said, it's all God. I see God. I don't know why I said that. But then the other people who were there with us said like, oh, he's on a God trip. Don't pay any attention to him. So I never said that again, although I think I did experience that quite a lot, you know, and I had an experience like that when I was like 2, 3, 4 years old too, you know, without acid. just being in the woods and sort of feeling this kind of oneness and this peace, yeah, this stillness, this something that was there. So I did have that with acid, but also it was mixed with the chemicals because they put, you know, they were making different cocktails of acid that mix it with other things and stuff like that.
Even back then, huh?
Yeah, and acid has a chemically kind of a feeling to the body too, a little sort of a nervousness or something that isn't.
Yeah.
You know, so there was but sometimes that inner feeling could be overpower that. So yeah, I mean, I had, you know, I did a fair amount of acid. I don't think I didn't do it every day for sure, but
but your experiences with it, did it touch upon this descriptionless, you know?
Yes, it did, but not to the degree that it is now. But yeah, because it was combined with the chemical part of it. Plus, I was with other people, but we became quiet. I mean, most acid trips would all be sitting in a living room or something, and no one would say anything for quite some time. And I would melt into the chair or become like 2 inches tall or whatever. You know, these different experiences that happen. And
in my generation,
the quietness that I had, because people, for some reason, when I went to Denver from Haight-Ashbury, and because I was in Haight-Ashbury, people thought that was a big deal that I had been in Haight-Ashbury and went to Denver. My girlfriend went to school at the University of Denver, and her parents gave her some money, and she used that money to pay for an apartment for me to go there. So I did. And I didn't talk very much at that time. I had a vocabulary where I'd say, "Oh wow," or something, but I would say it in a lot of different ways, so it had all kinds of different meanings. And for some reason, people thought I was like, I don't know, something like a guru or something. They'd say, "Oh, go to Peter." Yeah, Peter's like some. I mean, I didn't feel that way, but they seemed to think something about me or feel something about me. And so whenever anybody had a bad trip, they would bring them to me and they'd say, "Go to Peter." And which was really challenging for me because immediately I wouldn't be on a trip. I could be peaking and suddenly I was totally straight, which I didn't like because I wanted to peak. And then I would have to deal with them and calm them down. And they'd say, this one guy said, "The devil is in the statue of Mary at the church. Can you come there? And we have to get the devil out of the statue." And that, so I went with them. And said, like, "Yeah, I'm not seeing it, man." Look, it's a statue. And I would be able to sort of calm them down. So I help people with bad trips, having no idea what to do or how to do anything like that. And only it just annoyed me because I wasn't annoyed at the time. I helped the person, but I felt like that was my trip. You know, I don't have the trip. I was only in it for like 20 minutes and now I can't go back to it again. I'm just totally, it was weird. The whole effect of acid just left me.
Right. Yeah. Because out of necessity, perhaps, of the role you were there to play. And Peter, this is a nice segue to another question, I think, that I'd love to know your response to, because from the first time we met, you've described yourself as a teacher. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Well, before I finish, I want to say there's something about my personality, my character, that likes to question authority figures in a sense, or spiritual authorities in a sense, but also okay, so I'll say one famous speaker on non-duality who I've resonated with and apparently gotten a lot out of is Paul Hederman. And the first time I spoke with him in one of his meetings last fall or late summer, maybe, the first question I think I asked him was, "Why are you speaking 4 times every week about this? What motivates you to want to be a teacher, to want to speak?" And he was silent for a second. He thought about it, and then he said, "Well, it's just the seating assignment of this action figure." That's his way of putting it. He said, for this action figure, that's just the seating assignment, apparent, it seems.
Yeah, kind of. I kind of feel that way too. I mean, I don't think, do you perceive me as an authority figure? I don't think that's
no, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, but I just mean you, what you were just describing, I thought was a beautiful segue into this, because even back 30, 40 years ago, when you were taking LSD in Haight-Ashbury or Denver, if you were in the midst of a peaking experience, you would somehow drop out of it to be there for someone else. So there's almost this inherent character. It's like, the way I view it, Peter, is that every human body has their own genetics and conditioning that leads to their own, let's say, inclinations, preferences, apparent differences. And some prefer to be silent, some prefer to speak. There's all the colors in the rainbow in every variation. So with all of this being said, what's your take on being known as a teacher or speaker on this sacred unknowableness?
It's just a word, right? And all words are problematic, because in essence, I don't feel that, how could I say this with people? I see what's inside people who come to me that don't know what's inside them. And this happened with healing too. And that feeling that what's inside them is certainly no lesser or any different or separate from what I'm experiencing. And I see that in them, and I just want them to see that. I just want them to see that in them. So I don't want them to look at me. I want them to look at them. And so my goal is to have them look at them and to not look at me, because they always start off looking at you, they always start off that way. So my job is a lot of my attention is to get them not to look at me and to look at them. That's where I spend all my time doing it, to get them to look at them, that it's inside them, and it's in, because it's not helpful. If they look at me as the teacher and they look at that, it's not helpful to me and it's not helpful to them. Nobody benefits from that. So I'm constantly pushing that back onto them, and it works. They do accept that after a while. It takes a while with some, they can feel more attached, particularly if they have certain experiences. But to get rid of that and to push that away, because it isn't good to be seen, in that way as something special. It's really not good. It's worse for the person that's the teacher than it is for anybody else. Other people can say, but the teacher gets, it's just really, really not good. And we've seen a lot of teachers just destroyed by it. And I had a good
Peter,
friend.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Who was like a, they call him the yuppie guru, but he had many followers, many thousands. He sold out halls and did all that. I went to high school with him. He went to Haight-Ashbury with me, and he became this teacher, this guru, and I knew people who were his students, too, and they said, "Oh, he's amazing. He had all these CDs. He could do all this stuff," but he also was exposed by 60 Minutes and 48 hours of having a cult, of running a cult, and he committed suicide. And so it was this great lesson for me really early on, that you don't want to drag your ego on this journey, man. If you're taking this seriously, that's the last thing you want to do. And he did. And that caused enormous pain to him and pain to other people as well. And it was just a lesson that you just really, really don't want to do that. You always want to be aware, because that ego, don't ever say, "Oh yeah, I'm totally free of the ego, man." It's like, if you believe that, you're going to have a problem, because you're not going to acknowledge when it comes up as a spiritual ego or whatever else. You're not going to be aware of that. So you need to always be aware when it comes up, open to it, let it go, but if you think you're done with it, then when it comes up, you don't know that. Maybe other people can see it, but you're blind to it. And you're kind of screwed at that point, because it's going to keep on coming and it's going to keep messing around with things. So I learned that from Rama, was what he called himself, Zen Master Rama, Freddie Lenz. So that example was a very, very powerful example to me, seeing the tapes of him interviewed and stuff, and just, that was an example of not to do that. So teacher is a word that I don't know what else to say. It's like you have to say something. At some
Yeah.
point, I would say awaken teacher. My friend said, why would you say that? You don't want, if you're awake, you don't think you're yourself. So you don't have that. Yeah, it's true. It's words are really not very, they're extremely primitive, limited tools for us to express this. Let's just say that's the point. That's the truth of it.
Well, Peter, I mean, for me personally, I like to hear as wide of a variety of expressing this as there is to be expressed. For me, I start to feel a little jittery or uncomfortable when I hear like too many people say things in an entirely identical way, verbatim. This is repeating Tony Parsons or Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta or Thich Nhat Hanh. I want to hear your expression, and I do hear that from you. You know what I mean? And to me, that's where the beauty lies, because there is no right way of putting it. There's no totally on point or clear way of saying it. Words themselves are always going to obscure, always. And so the closest I feel that you can get is your own discovery in this very moment of how it feels most authentic to express, not some cookie cutter. Yes.
Yeah. And more what I say to people is, no matter what, we read books that we like, Ramana or whatever, Nisargadatta, that touches us in a way, right? So these are beautiful pointers, and thank God that we have them. They're wonderful for all of us. But the important thing to do is, when you feel that resonance, when you feel touched, and you usually feel it around in your heart, right? You feel there's something, and part of what you feel says like, oh my God, I always knew that. Something inside you says, I always knew that. And you did. The point to do at that point is to shut the book and focus on that feeling. That's you. That's where it is. And the book has allowed you to trigger that, to point to it, but don't go back and look for another one in the book. And don't think that person had anything to do with it, because that knowing that you're feeling, that's the same knowing that they have. You're feeling it's in you, and it's always been in you. Otherwise, it wouldn't be true. If it wasn't always in you, it wouldn't be true. So it's important to have these words to touch that place, but the touching of that place is the important thing. The place itself is the important thing. And there's many teachers that have helped me, and touch that place, and oh, yes, and then often I'll go back and go, oh, I want more of that. Let's read it ahead to the next thing. And oh yeah, again. But no, just stay with that one thing. Maybe it's just the first sentence or word in the page, and that's good. Okay, shut the book. That's good. And you can read it again when you're sort of done with that, but really explore deeply. Let this go sink deeper and deeper into what you are.
Yeah. Well, Peter,
you're exactly right, because it's like, it has to come from authenticity. If people are repeating words, people can repeat the exact same words, but they're feeling it so strongly that it is totally authentic to them. And and when you hear it, it's the first time it's ever been said, because it's touching you in the same way. Yeah. But and people can also repeat those words and have no authentic feeling. They're just using the words. It's all mental, and you're not going to feel anything from that. You're just not, because you feel it when you read those books from awakened masters, or whatever you want to call them, because
I would say, Peter,
transmitted.
Yes, the transmission. But Peter, I would also say, this is kind of a counterpoint to some of what you said. It's so complex and complete. But this one other angle of that I feel drawn to express is, even a sick doctor can prescribe good medicine. So even someone who perhaps has flaws in their morality or character, or maybe they are just verbatim repeating like a parrot, and it's all intellectual for them, but even that could somehow trigger something. Because I'd say the greatest experience on the physical, on this apparent level of whatever that I've had, came from someone that months later I was very disillusioned by. And I'd say also a year ago, I forgot what I was going to say about it, but there was someone who was helping me really look at Nisargadatta's words in a very deep way. Oh, he said this beautiful thing. I've since had to part ways from this person due to them being what I would call a pathological narcissist that was very toxic to be friends with.
Yeah.
And yet for a period of time, he had a great passion for this and expressing it in some way. People are multifaceted, but he said this thing that I wanted to bring up that you reminded me of it's like when we're reading a book and we have that feeling you're describing and it's in us. It's like if we keep reading after that point, it's like the analogy he gave is like it's like walking over diamond after diamond looking for diamonds, you know. It's like, where are you going to stop and just bask in who you are, that this is reflecting, and rather than, oh, what's the next sentence, what's the next page, what's the next book, what's the next YouTube video. If you feel it in this very moment, turn this video off and just be with that, because that's you, that's your nature, that's you.
And we have so many things, mirrors. What is really a teacher, a good teacher, is a mirror. It's just a mirror. So when we see a teacher, we say, oh, they're so peaceful and so beautiful. They're so it's wonderful. It's a mirror. We're talking about ourselves, but we're not ready to accept that about ourselves yet. Muji, I used to like a lot and saw him years ago. And at one point, I just realized that everything I liked about him was me. I just wasn't seeing it yet. So I showed my friend a picture of Muji. And I said, would you like to see a picture of me? And I showed him a picture of him. He said, that's not you. I said, yeah, this isn't me. That's me. You know, I just don't know it yet. You know, I'm still just opening to what this is.
Right.
And that helped.
Right.
So every teacher really is just a mirror of that. Everything is a mirror, really. You know, but teachers are here. We won't accept how beautiful we are. You know, we don't want to accept how beautiful we are.
I think, yes. I think some story of the Buddha might have happened first, but I think John Lennon also did this in an interview. But I think there was some question that Buddha had where he just held up a flower as the answer. Yeah. You know, what is your message? And he has held up and I heard an interview with John Lennon where he said it's all there in the flower, you know, and it's the flower sermon.
Well, he didn't even need a flower. That's the truth of it, is he didn't need a flower at all. He didn't need anything but the flower. That's the beginning of Zen. That was the beginning of Zen. When he held up that flower, that was the first Zen teaching. He didn't say anything. And I can't remember the name of the guy that saw it, but only out of there were like 100 monks, and only one of them looked and smiled, and he said, you have the treasure trove of my, you know, awakening, you know, from that, you know, out of all these monks, you have that, because you saw the direct transmission of mind to mind, which is what Zen is. Zen is a direct transmission of mind to mind.
Self to self.
Yeah, self to self. But it isn't like the teacher to the student mind. It's right. Yeah, it's the one self.
The one self, the capital S Ramana self. Yes.
Realizing itself. And that's what happened with this flower thing. So that's why I said he didn't need the flower either, you know.
Right.
Flower was just sort of a symbol of something to hold up, you know. But it was beautiful. It was a beautiful teaching. I mean, like 200 monks came to gather around to listen to his talk, because he did speak, you know, and expecting that. And he didn't at all. He held up the flower, and that was the whole thing. He didn't say anything. So that was, imagine how a very powerful teaching in that day and age. I don't know if anybody that we know of, that I know of, had done anything like that before, but it was really shocking and very Zen-like to sort of shock people out of what they're expecting, and also to reveal something very powerful and real.
The ordinary.
Yeah, ordinary, and like I saw up on the, you know, top of the hill, like that holy, you know, that everything is totally holy. It is, and that's what our mind and conditioning separates us from. We can't see that anymore, and we live in this very two-dimensional, limited world, and it's just nothing like that. That's why quantum physics, I think, is so wonderful, because at this point, it's a lot like a Zen koan, you know, because if people are honest about it, I think Max Planck said, if you think you understand quantum physics, you have no understanding of quantum physics.
Yes, right, exactly. Well, all right. So if I'd like to wrap up here with two questions before we finish up. First, I'd like to ask what many of the people who watch this channel or listen to this podcast would consider themselves seekers. Perhaps many of them are even perpetually reading, listening, re-listening, falling asleep while listening, hoping something will seek into the unconscious. What if, as someone who is no longer seeking, perhaps, if that's fair to say, what would be your pointer or advice, or what would you like to say to someone like that?
I'd say keep doing it. Go seeking, because if that's the time, what's happening in that thing, that's important. I was a seeker for many, many years and did all of that, spent my whole life. I mean, one of the things before this that I felt is there was nothing that I wanted in life more than awakening. Absolutely, that was like up here, and everything else was down here. Everything else in my life was nowhere close to that, seeking truth. And yeah, I don't do that anymore. I mean, it's just unfolding all the time. So that's why I'm not seeking, because it's constantly be shown. I don't need to do anything for it to unfold in me, however it is, it's always unfolding. As you know, just you said, we were in this accident and this thing, and we're in bed, and then someone put us together and we wouldn't even know each other. And Ram Dass wouldn't have met that nurse, and all these things that happened. It's amazing. We don't know how this happened. It's unbelievable life when we really see it. It's constantly showing us truth. So I would say to seek, I mean, it's going to be very hard for someone to just, we don't really control this. It's not us controlling it. So just go, I want to seek, go ahead. That's telling you to seek, go and seek, and it's like people become monks before they're really ready to be monks, and they go through a lot of struggle. They have sexual, I'm so, horny, or I want this or that, or where I could make a lot of money. Why didn't I do that? They have these doubts and all these things because they're not ready. If you're ready, life will show you that, and it just happens. You're not trying to do anything. The other things just fall away, and it just happens. So the seeking is fine. That I think one of the best practices that I had early on was the don't know mind, was to really just look at your mind and admit, and see that that it doesn't know anything. And that sort of frees it from being attached to these different things. So then the seeking is a lot freer. You're not so attached, like, oh, that word, that. No, it's just like, okay, just let it pour in. Seek, listen to these things while I'm sleeping, listen to all this stuff, let it flow through me. Or as Thich Nhat Hanh would tell us when we're listening to his Dharma talks, is like, you could fall asleep, it's fine. Let anything happen, just let it penetrate you like Dharma rain, but just don't hold on to anything. Don't compare it to something else that someone else said. Just let it flow into you like Dharma rain. So if you seek in that way, let it all just flood through you. It's all grist for the mill. It's all wonderful. Let it like flow through you, and if your desire is that you're going to find this truth that's going to set you free, okay, if that's what's getting you to do it, go for that. But have enough freedom to realize that that's not really going to happen. What you're really looking for is in you. And every time you have a resonance, because if you're seeking, you're going to get these little kernels or go, wherever it comes from, like a terrible teacher or whatever it is, or going to the store and someone said, would you like a Coca-Cola or something like that? That could be it. So wherever it comes from and you feel your heart, something in here just blossom, something just unfold and open. Oh, that feels good. Yeah. Suddenly you feel a sense of peace. You're not thinking so much. There's this feeling and your attention goes on that feeling. That's wonderful. So really treasure that, because as a seeker, you're going to find this often, right? If you're reading a book over and over again, that's why you're reading it, because you felt that.
Yeah.
If you're not even going to be seeking if you don't experience ever that feeling of resonance in heart, right? It's not going to happen. All seekers feel that. at different moments. But that's a very important thing. So settle into that, like we talked about. Shut the book, turn off the video, and just say, what is this? This feels good. What is this? What is this knowing? What is this type of thing that feels like it knows? What does that mean? You know, and don't go to your mind to answer it. You know, try not to do that. If the mind, which will come in and say, oh, I know what that is, say like, yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, but no, not really. It's something else. And then the more it comes in, say, yeah, no, okay, I'm back to the feeling. Because in the feeling is where the knowing is. Don't get distracted by the thoughts. Stay in that space of feeling, that energy that's there. So all that seeking is gonna trigger that a number of times. It's wonderful, but really say that it's not the words, it's not the teacher, it's not any of that. It's this feeling. This is the most important thing. Somehow this is what I've been looking for. And then the more you open to it, the more it will show you that that's true, that this is what you've been looking for, that it's all in you, you know, but you have to experience it, because trying to get it, other people tell you, and everybody can say it's all in you. Everybody's always telling you it's always in you. Any good teacher's always telling you that, but it's not enough. You have to experience it. You have to feel it. And don't let your thoughts interfere that say it's not in me. Just let me talk to you.
Right. Yeah, Peter, that's a wonderful response to that question. And yeah, I think everyone who listens will be very grateful for hearing that, for you expressing that. Now, one final question I have, a little bit on the lighter, more human side. You were a screenwriter and filmmaker. Do you have any all-time favorite films, perhaps that express this in some way, or perhaps just that you like?
I like Schitt's Creek.
On Netflix. That's a TV show.
Yeah, you see it on Prime Video.
Oh, okay.
Well, I made commercial films. You know, I never went to Hollywood. I mean, of course, we're all tempted to go to Hollywood, you know, but you sort of have to start over again from there. And I had a very good business, and I was very well known, and made a certain amount of money, so I was comfortable with that. In doing that, and it was fun. You know, I still worked with a lot of the same actors and cinematographers and people in Hollywood. I worked in LA a lot, you know, for hiring people.
Right. Well, you mentioned A Course in Miracles or David Hofstadter in these films that speak to something deeper. And do you have any favorite films that seem to touch on that?
I look at a movie almost every night. I still do. And
yeah.
Most of them I'm a little bit disappointed by, but occasionally I'll see something that will just will touch me in some way. And I can't say, I don't remember anything that really stands out because I see so many of them. Yeah.
All-time favorite?
All-time favorite movies?
Yeah.
Ooh. That would be hard. I mean, I've been doing this most of my life. It's hard to pick a favorite. I like a lot of movies. There's a lot of movies that I've really loved. Any movie that really touches me. And I think, a lot of Disney animated things, like they're very innocent. You know, the more innocent, the better. I like innocent movies. I think movies that show a change where people, you know, the person might be really messed up in the beginning, but then they have a growth to them. I'm really touched by those movies. And a lot of the more modern movies for adults, it doesn't seem to happen. It's like things are really terrible and now they're worse. At the end.
There's a lot of cautionary tales, perhaps.
And depressed, and I wish I never watched that movie. You know, I'd like to end like old Hollywood, feeling good. I'd like to feel good, you know. With it.
Have you seen?
That's truth, you know.
Have you seen the new?
Good.
Have you seen the new Pixar Disney movie Soul yet?
Not yet. No. Is that good?
Oh, you're gonna love it. From what you just said.
Yeah. Maybe look at that. I can see that on Prime Video. I think they have that. Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and it's exactly what you're describing. Well, no, I think that was a great answer to the question. you know, movies which express this growth and this evolution, going back to where we started. And so, with all that being said, Peter,
Do that. Quite a few movies do that. I mean, that's the old Hollywood way. It's sort of more
yes,
modern. I don't know what they call it, but it's depressing to have movies where that
yeah,
doesn't happen, where things just get worse and worse and reveals. They're supposed to be showing the truth of life, but it's not the
yeah,
truth. It's the opposite. The truth of life is this unfolding to this wonderful experience of peace, bliss, you know, love. That's the truth of life. Everything resonates with love. Everything is vibrating with love. Every leaf of every tree is vibrating with love. That's true. That's what quantum physics is showing us, and what we feel subjectively, and what we've known for as humans for over 10,000 years. You know, certain humans experience this. It's a subjective thing,
Peter,
we know.
Peter, that's a beautiful response to this question, and I really appreciate that. So, as a final thing before we end, where would people be able to find you if they want to reach out and say hello or follow anything that you're putting out there?
They could go to my website, n-enlightenment.com. That's where most of the stuff is. And
What is that again? Say that again.
N, the letter N, hyphen, enlightenment, like it's like EN,
Yeah.
except instead it's just N hyphen and then enlightenment, like the rest of enlightenment.com. That's
Got
that's my website, and most of the things come off there. There's Facebook, and I do these silent transmissions, you know. So, but I think all the information is on there. That's the easiest way to find it. I don't really get into doing too much of promoting or doing those things. I'm lucky I have the website at all. But over time, over years, there's been a number of things on it. So it has quite a lot of information on it at this point.
We'll make sure to post a link to the website in the description for the video.
Yeah. They
All
are
right.
thing to do. Yeah. Thank you,
Peter,
Mike. This is awesome.
Peter, it was a pleasure and an honor to have this conversation with you.
It was a pleasure and honor to be with you too. You have a wonderful way of interviewing. It's just, you know what it is? Yourself isn't in the way. There isn't this self in the way. It's a very free thing. And that means that you can listen really well. You know, you have your own thing. I wanted to understand this or that, but it's not burdened by this self, which is very refreshing in the human world, as you may know.
Well, thank you for the compliment. Yes. I feel the same about you, Peter. I don't feel much of a self there either, and it's really
nice.
It's just, I feel it's just the dancing of colors, the play of. This is just the play of Maya, and I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy this conversation.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.